Okay, so this question is asking about the rape of Nanking, which is a historical event that occurred in 1937 in Nanking, which was then the capital of China. So there's two parts to the question. Number one is the 5 W's, which is going to be who, what, where, when, and why the event happened. And then secondly, the reaction from the global community. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's begin with what it was. The rape of Nanking was a massacre committed by Japanese soldiers who were believed to have killed in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Chinese women, children, and non-combatants. So, massacre committed by Japanese soldiers on Chinese civilians. The exact figures are hard to know because many of the historical records were destroyed by the Japanese, but it's believed that tens, if not thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people were killed. The who has already been answered. Japanese soldiers and Chinese civilians. The when. It began on December 13th, 1937, 4 years before World War I. But the massacre, the rape of Nanking began December 13th, 1937, and lasted 6 weeks. Where? It took place in Nanking, which was the capital city of China in 1937. And then finally, the why question. Try to clear up a little space for that. Because it's more complicated than the rest. So again, to put it in context, this occurred during the Second Chinese-Japanese War. And not merely the scale of the massacre, which was enormous, but the sheer brutality of the things that were done to the Chinese people. It's difficult to read accounts of what happened to, especially to the women and children. Historians have tried to find a reason for the scale and the intensity of the event. But Jonathan Spence writes, there is no obvious explanation, nor can one be found. The Japanese expected an easy victory, but were frustrated with the progress of the war. And were tired, angry, and bored. And probably the most important thing that he identifies was that in the Japanese soldiers' minds, the war was purposeless. There was no clear-cut goal. No clear-cut purpose, no clear-cut goal, no idea of what victory even meant. And so as a result of that, all of the Chinese, regardless of their gender or their age or their status as combatants, were marked out as victims. So to talk about the global reaction, we really need to fast forward to 1946, when World War II had ended and the Japanese had surrendered. And there was a war crimes tribunal. And the impact of the War Crimes Tribunal was that 2 superior officers were sentenced to death. And 5 other Class A war criminals were also sentenced to death. "17 others had lesser sentences. Since then, the event has been extremely controversial because Japanese nationalists have denied it ever occurred, or have tried to create a revisionist history of the events. And it has been a stumbling block in Japanese and Chinese relations since.